I think that's good because it also sort of echoes something that Michelle Fortin was talking about when he was talking about not wanting to necessarily over-optimize a sales letter because it takes away from the primary reason you put up that sales letter, which was to convert the traffic. And we talked about using feeder sites, funneling the traffic over. So I reckon there's obviously a few reasons why that works, and you're talking about it also from an SEO point of view. You want to try and go for more pages. I had one client contact me and say, hey, I want to rank for this particular keyword, which was funny t-shirts, and he said, oh, look, I want to rank for this keyword. And I said, hang on, if you want to go after something like that, how about we look at some of these other keywords? You really want to go for a lot of these other longer tail keywords and variation keywords, try and get a base of those, and then further down the track, you might pick up that really highly competitive term, and you use those other things, like you said, the quick wins. That's what you want to go for straight out, off the bat.
Yep, absolutely. Like you said, quick wins. And, if he's in funny t-shirts and things like that, I mean, he's got a lot of opportunity to basically expand that infinitely because there's heaps you can do.
Yeah, very cool. And where do you go from there?
Basically, I think we got up to the off-page point of view, which is, when you said I would pick off pages as the next most important. Yep, agree with that. But you can never just pick one. We always have a fairly extensive content build out for our own sites, and if always try and do it for clients. In fact, if I think somebody's got their site that is too thin as far as content is, then I won't take them on. I'll tell them I will offer to help them with it, or tell them how they can do that. But they've just got to have a certain amount, because it's all fine and well if you go and do the optimization yourself and you make a mistake for yourself. But when people come in to pay me for a service, it's my duty to tell them whether or not I think they're going to be doing the best thing for their website. And, it doesn't work good for anyone if they're paying me for a service and they don't get results because of some core limitations. It just doesn't work out like that. So it's always got to be a good combination of both. And I tend to go pretty heavy on content these days. Sites can range from, 50 to 100 through to 300, 400, 500, 600 pages, and that's just pure content, not community-driven content there. So it always adds into what you're trying to do. But on with the... How
much content with that... Sorry to jump in. How much content on a page, how much content do you like to see? Like, is there a minimum? Obviously, it's going to vary, but like a certain number of words, or...
I like to see content that doesn't look like it is just search engine fodder.
Yeah.
So wherever I can now, I get my writers to include images with them. I basically fill them out into a properly structured article. It's giving something back to the user. It's a minimum of 500 to 600 words. The odd article in at 800 or 1,000 words.
Yeah, very cool.
Now, so I don't have one standard word format throughout the site. I basically tell them to write until they believe the subject is covered enough that it would give a good read.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's 500 or 600 words. Other times it's 800, 1,000, 1,200 words. And a couple of articles are like 3,000 words. So,
sounds like user optimization, like giving the user something of value as opposed to just creating some gateway spam pages.
Yeah, exactly. And don't get me wrong, and if you want to call them gateway spam pages, that's cool. I tend to call them search engine fodder, same thing. They have their uses, they do. You can set up sites very quickly and you can monitor an industry on whether it's going to be worth going into without investing a lot of time and effort into it. But I just say that for a site that I know is going to be a very big asset to my company or to the future, I like to set it up firstly with base level content, and then I'll usually end up going back and totally rewriting it. The reason I do that is people are like, well, why don't you just set it up right from the first time or whatnot? Well, when you're getting 200-300 pages written, I'd rather start it off on a base level rather than pay, because a good piece of content will cost you a lot of money. It can cost, some of my content I'll pay $70 or $80 for per article, but that's where it needs to be industry specific, like really high quality. They will decimate you if you don't have it right, and they'll point it out. So I start off with cheaper content for sites, and I put a lot of pages out there, and I see what comes back. If I start to get a lot of traffic and a lot of interest on that, then I know that by increasing the quality of that site, increasing the quality of the content, I can bring back more visitors and get an even higher response and a higher result from that website.
Very cool.
As for the off-page, then if we're skipping straight over to off-page, I basically follow a concept now, or concept rule, whatever you like to call it. and it's in part of our in part it is in alignment with our algorithm that we have to find our own phrases to rank for. But basically, it is the main phrase, or the ego keyword, as I call it, is usually not the phrase you want to start going for straight away. I say plan for the very top end, but start with the very bottom. So basically, if you've got the content in there, the very first pages you want to start optimizing are the ones that have the best opportunity for you to get rankings quickly. I tend to do a percentage work split. So, imagining that I have a plan that is, we'll just put a point value to it. Let's say I have 100 points in work. It can be broken down however you like. I'll usually say I have, in the first 3 months, between 30 to 40% of the work will go for the main level phrase, which is going to be the phrase the phrase
ego word.
The ego word, yes. the biggest payoff from, but it doesn't have to be an ego word. It can be, for example, a very good buying keyword, but it might be a longer end target. You might not be able to get there very quickly. It might take you a long time to get there. In that case, that falls under the same thing as the end result keyword, the desired keyword, or the ego keyword, meaning the keyword that you can boast the most about.
Yeah.
So only put 30 to 40% into the main set, into the set of ego keywords, and then basically the other 70 to 60% goes fully into individual pages in the long tail, because that's where I know you'll get the quickest wins in the first 3 months. That is by far where you'll get the most out of it. So that's what we do. And then what we do is we come to the 3 month point and we usually flip it. So we'll start targeting, or we'll actually take it down a little bit, is we start targeting more towards the higher end phrase and a little bit less on the lower tail phrase, to start reversing and bringing out the main phrase quicker. Now, usually what I find here is, especially if you're going into a competitive market and you want to be a little bit tactical about it, is by the time you start to flip the work and go for the large phrase, you start to see not only the large phrase, but almost all of the intermediate phrases come to the first page around about the same time if you plan it right.
Very cool.
Now, what this means is that if you hit the page really early for a big level phrase, your competition finds out about you really quickly. And they'll come and they'll hunt you down, they'll find out what's going. If they can, they'll try and put you out of business. And that's, of course, this is in cutthroat industries. It might not be the same. It's not the same in small niche industries, but it can be something to worry about later, because especially if you have something that is unique to you as far as a business process, and you're still trying to capture ground for the market share. If they see someone coming to the market very early with something that they haven't done yet, usually they can affect that change and do the same thing before you can get the front page ranking, or before you can capture enough of the market share. So by focusing on everything other than the main phrase, you kind of build everything they're not looking at every day, because if someone's there for an ego phrase, they're searching that main phrase every day to see where they are, or they just because they can, because that's why it's an ego phrase. But they're not looking in the long tail phrases. They're not looking for all the variations. So by coming up for the variations and then the main phrase, it's kind of like it's what I call market domination. Before they can realize that you've jumped up behind them, and then they realize you're on the first page for that phrase, so they start looking more, and then they're like, crap, he's like everywhere. So before they even get a chance, you've like white ninja'd out of nowhere and like, pah!